the thing that I think is flooding the zone the most right now, and there are several accounts that are doing this the best, obviously one of them being Elon Musk, is the first sort of main target of DOGE, which has been USAID. And we're discovering, now there's an argument to be made, and critics of what DOGE is doing is making that this only represents a tiny percentage of the American budget. It's only X $100 billion or whatever. But for most Americans, what they're discovering is America was funding a DEI initiative for $1.5 million in Serbia, and cocaine dogs and all of these things that are on their face so insanely absurd and clearly do not do anything to advance the American interest, which is the premise of what this money, our money, is supposed to be going toward. And it's just been unbelievably effective, in part because, as Batya was sort of intimating before, Americans of both parties, but especially working class Americans, don't love the idea of foreign aid. So, first question, do you guys think that this was how did they luck out in choosing USAID as the first target, or was that like an effective assassin with a sniper rifle, an extremely effective string to pull on because they knew there would be so much corruption and waste there? What do you guys think? Luck or intentionality there?
I think if you audited anything this large, you would find, let's do it for the Pentagon next, who has failed, 6 audits in a row, 5 audits in a row. So it doesn't surprise me that they're finding silly things. But I think the difference of my perspective here is I think to a certain extent this is democracy. When you get a bunch of people together to vote on what we want to do, you're going to get some silliness there. That's baked into the formula of democracy. I feel like I may be out of step with the both of y'all here, but I am extremely against this. So just for the sake of argument, I will say 20% of it is just trash. It's DEI nonsense. It's silly. It's absurd. We should get rid of it. I 100% will just give that point away. An audit to me makes sense here. And again, coming back to national security, there's a theory of America's role in the world that Trump and his people subscribe to, which is we are most powerful when we withdraw from the world. And I think soft power comes so amazingly cheap. It is so much easier to provide HIV funding to people in various parts of the world than it is to deal with the aftermath when the population seriously has a negative health impact and it becomes radical and unstable. Right now, we are dealing with the entire world, and the Western values are destabilizing. You've got Russia, India, China are trying to rush into all of these power vacuums. And right now, what America needs is one less problem in the world, more than we need this relatively trivial cost savings in comparison to our GDP. So audit the hell out of it. I'm 100% for that. I think Elon Musk and DOGE can be helpful at that. But this idea of raising everything, burning it to the ground, when there's no political willpower to build it back up, and we can't even get both sides talking to each other right now, I just think it is going to leave America less powerful and less able to influence on the world stage.
Well, there have definitely been some, for all of the, DEI plays being put on in Eastern Europe, which obviously everyone opposes, and, just stokes our outrage at the waste in our government. There are things that are obvious goods that, just to choose one of a lot of examples, there was a really intense story about women who were getting treated for HIV or AIDS, all of a sudden having to get these emergency doctor's appointments to get devices taken out of them. The one that really stuck out to me was there's something like 10,000 ISIS fighters in these makeshift prisons in Syria. They were being overseen, guarded by U.S.-backed Kurdish forces. And then all of a sudden, when the aid got cut, the guards stopped showing up to work. And it's the idea of 10,000 ISIS fighters being released because someone's just hacking away at USAID doesn't seem to be that wise. But Batya, because I suspect you're generally in support of what's going on here, give us the steel man case.
I think this is an audit. stuff is being slowly refunded, right? So if Elon Musk wasn't, so desperate for attention, this would have happened in a much more normal way. And I do think it started as an audit because a whole bunch of payments had been authorized. And then the current acting head of USAID was like, wait a minute, I thought that Trump said that we had a total freeze on foreign spending. And foreign spending, of course, is extremely important. We spend a lot of money on making other countries better and not enough making our own country better. There's also the problem that Trump, he doesn't really care about spending, I don't think. He's not a deficit hawk. He's not a person who feels this very strongly. He promised not to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And that is the biggest chunk of our spending, right? Is stuff that absolutely, I think we would all agree, cannot be touched. And I think most Republican voters, I don't know about Republican politicians, but most Republican voters agree with Trump. Like, they don't want that stuff touched. So what they have to do is find other places to cut. And foreign spending is a very obvious one, because to the average American, it's like, why is this my problem for so much of this stuff? And this is just beyond like the gay operas or whatever. Honestly, the gay opera sounds great. I kind of want to see the gay opera, but there's a lot of stuff there where it's like, why?
I can't get you into those meetings, Fatia, just so you know. I'll text you after the show.
But so I think it makes sense, and it could have been done a lot better if it wasn't sort of this Elon Musk thing where everybody's coming to me now and saying you hate Elon, you're so anti Elon Musk, but look, he's doing this great thing. Like, I honestly don't understand why like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's the head of the DOGE House subcommittee, can't be in charge of this. I think she'd be doing a much better job of it. She's a great politician. Her heart really beats for the people of Georgia. She cares a lot about the people.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's great? Wow,
Batia. I'm a huge fan of hers. You guys don't know that? I'm a huge Marjorie Taylor Greene fan. Yes.
Wow.
She's one of my faves. Yes.
She's one of your faves. She of the Jewish space lasers.
Yeah. Well, she said Rothschild, and she didn't know they were Jews, which is something that a lot of sort of working class rural whites don't know. I have found in my reporting. But so she didn't say Jewish space lasers. Very important distinction. But yes, I'm a huge fan of hers. So I don't understand why this can't be done through normal government oversight. Why it has to be done like through Elon Musk's ego. But in general, yes, I think this is what an audit would look like. And now that Marco Rubio has been sort of put in charge of USAID, I think that's a really good, I mean, obviously, I think we probably all agree that he's great and has a very good heart and a very good sense of both what the American people want and what is required for, our national security.
One of the things that USAID has funded are programs like PEPFAR, this HIV/AIDS treatment program that has saved, you could argue, something like 25 million lives over the past 2 decades. Like, things like that are now seemingly hanging in the balance here. Do you think that how far, I guess I want to ask you guys, do you think American sentiment against this aid, how far does it go? If Americans knew that that is one of the things that was being cut, would they support it?
I think that, unfortunately, I think that one of the things that's changed, Barry, in the last 20 years is I think we don't really tell people about soft power and some of the United States strategy in the world. Because I think if you hear about 25 million lives being saved from AIDS, I think it's really easy to just think of that as like a third world problem that doesn't really affect us. I think that if you really dig down into it and you start thinking it mostly affects women in many of these regions, I would really encourage people to go read Ben Ryan's reporting on this. He's been exceptional talking about PEPFAR and the effects of cutting this program. I think that people just don't understand how these dynamics work and the benefits that we get from this. It's not like the United States does not get power back from investing in Africa, which has a tremendous amount of resource critical minerals that we need for national security and industry. It's not like we don't benefit from these relationships and having constructive things in the region. So I think the Americans don't care, but I think it's because we're not telling a story to the American people about the purpose of this in a way they did when I was growing up. And I think American national security is far worse off for it.
Well, I mean, I think the strong argument here is, if we recede from these places, again, putting the gay operas aside, just looking at the most Like the things that are actually defensible. Gay operas is amazing, Batyan. All operas are gay, but the operas put on by USAID in far-flung places are even more gay. Is like, it's the power vacuum argument, right? If we're not doing this, China, Russia, other adversaries are going to rush in. And that's maybe an abstract concept to a lot of people. But I think that, like, we just, to me, that's the strongest argument for continuing at least some of these kinds of programs.
I guess what I would say is it's unclear how much of this the American people want funded, but in a democracy, the extent to which they want it funded is the extent to which it will be funded, and they will let their elected officials know whether they went too far at the next election cycle if they vote them out of office. I don't necessarily know that it would be so terrible if China took over some of these programs. I think the difference between the Democrats' foreign policy and the Republicans, or Trump's foreign policy, let's say, it's not really Republican, is, the Democrats believe that we should be out there helping weak people. And that makes those people reliant on us. They want weak allies so that they can sort of boss them around. And the Trump foreign policy is what Tulsi Gabbard articulated, which is, when it comes to terrorists, she is a hawk. And when it comes to counterproductive wars of regime change, she is a dove. It's this idea that, like, we want strong allies who bring something to the table, like Israel does, where we get a lot of bang for our buck in terms of the things that we need to protect our citizens. And it's very clear which countries are doing that and which countries are not doing that. And you see Trump sort of stabilizing those relationships where he feels we are getting a lot of bang for our buck. He doesn't like having these allies that are weak. I joke and say it's because, people take pictures of you standing with your allies, and he thinks weakness is lame, and he doesn't want to be in pictures with lame people. But, on a more serious level, like, there is this feeling of, like, that we are investing so much, we should get something in return for that, right? The art of the deal, like, all of our relationships should be bringing something to the table for our people. This is what Americans voted for him to do. So I think that you're going to see a lot of these programs refunded because people in the MAGA movement are thinking about the American people and thinking, they probably want these women to get their HIV shots. Like, there are certain things, I think you're right. Like, if you would even walk over to somebody in Appalachia who just lost everything and lost their home in this hurricane and said to them, how would you feel if, $2, per capita, you were asked to pay for this program in Africa? I think there are a lot of things that USAID funds that a lot of people would say, yes, but they should have the right to say that, right? And the way that they say that is in elections. So there's no way for us to know right now, but we will find out whether the cutting was too much. And I don't think this is a moral question. I think this is a political question.
I think it's a messaging question. I think that we have done, like both parties, have done a really poor job of explaining how American soft power all around the world and our integration in the globalist trade system has directly given America one of the highest standards of living in the entire world. Like, just compare us to Canada. It is night and day. We get stuff back from these relationships. And like, you're talking like we don't get anything from these relationships. Let me give you a really concrete example. The precursor to the operation to protect the Houthi attacks on our shipping lanes, where was that? All those commanders came from the fight to basically take over the Somali pirates that were attacking shipping vessels there, right? It would have been so much cheaper in retrospect for us to spend a little bit of foreign aid in that region, stabilize it, and stop these problems from coming to fruition. We get stuff back. And this is my really big objection, is right now, there is a real question if democracy is going to win or theocracy and strongmen are going to win. That is the big question for mankind right now. And I think anything that is adding to the values of the West, the values of democracy, the values of the international order, to cooperation, to free trade, I think this is the moment that really has to be defended, because China and Russia and all these other strongmen, they have a really different theory about how mankind should work. And I don't think America, like for those people, they're poor in Appalachia, they're going to have a worse standard of living if our values don't prevail. So I think this is really critical in this moment.
Okay, quickly, I want to close out just with some predictions. On the predictions market Kalshi, it's our sponsor for this episode, Elon's chance of leaving Doge before 2026 is trading at 43%. What do you guys think? In other words, Batya, I know you're in the Steve Bannon camp. I know you think Elon's not long for this world, not long for the MAGA world. Do you think that that's too low? Do you think he's going to be out sooner than that?
I think it's too low. I don't know about the timing. I'm bad with timing, but and if he's not
Is
out,
the Elon-Trump romance going to continue for the next while?
I don't think Trump is going to say anything mean about him or alienate him in any way, but I think he's going to quietly sort of have less and less power. Let's put it that way.
I think that Trump runs headfirst into conflict with strong people. I think this is why he fired Steve Bannon in the first administration. So I think eventually this is going to come to the head. The amount of power he's coalescing in the Republican Party is terrifying for anyone that understands the history of oligarchs in this country and what happens when they're very tightly aligned with the government. So I hope that he's not long for this world, and we'll have to see what happens.